Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for a review of the third studio album by the British rock band Boston Manor. This one is called Glue, and over the past few years, these guys have cemented their place as one of my favorite bands to come out of the 2010s. It all started with some good old pop punk in 2016 with their debut album Be Nothing, a solid album that still holds up, but they've evolved so far past that at this point that it's hard to even look at that as the same band. On Welcome to the Neighborhood in 2018, we got an album that was so fully fleshed out, featuring production from Mike Sapone, who is famous for working with Brand New, one of my favorite bands, so it makes sense that that went on to be one of my favorite records not only of that year, but of the entire decade. It caught me off guard when they dropped the single Liquid in the summer of 2019, featuring John Floreani of Trophy Eyes. It's a banging tune, a massive one that sounded fantastic live. I just didn't think that it was going to find a home on an album, but it did. That, along with the other singles that I heard, Everything is Ordinary, along with Ratking, I really didn't know where this album was going because it didn't make sense until I heard it in full. Shout out to Pure Noise Records for sending me this album a couple of weeks early. I always love when I have extra time to let an album ruminate in the back of my head so that I can pinpoint specific things that I really love or else didn't like about an album. And overall with Glue, I feel like this is an album that they were destined to make, like they were barreling towards this noise. And you can hear traces of it on their debut, but even with Welcome to the Neighborhood, maybe to them they weren't quite there. I still think that that remains their best record because of the way that it has this cohesive flow about it. It's a very tight record. Glue is longer. It takes its time. There's longer tracks. They fully flesh out certain aspects of their sound. There's some big guitar moments looming in the mix, and I have nothing but praise for their guitarist. Also the bass rhythms, the drums, really the vocals from Henry Cox here. You can tell that he's angry and isolated, and he doesn't know how he feels about himself because sometimes it's hate, sometimes it's trying to love and accept, and I love that we get to see all of that conflict play out over the course of 13 tracks. Everything is Ordinary was the single that announced the album Glue, and that is easily the worst song on the album. It's one that does kind of manifest some of the underlying issues. The one main complaint that I would have with this record, although it's not something that turns me off at all, some people might have trouble with the mixing on this LP. I would say that this track that opens up the record, Everything is Ordinary, feels out of place and just too crunchy, too flatline, like they're trying to stuff everything together in this mix and it feels compressed. And the vocals that Henry is putting out here, the compression, the effects there, it's not something that I necessarily dig. Fortunately for us, that's really the only song on the album that sounds like that. And I do think that Ratking was a very strong single that sounds like classic Boston Manor. But the heart of this album is something that you haven't even heard yet. So if you were kind of put off by the singles or you felt conflicted, please check out the full-length experience. Henry Cox has his strengths and weaknesses as a lyricist, but here, I feel that there's more well-written songs that do go a little bit deeper. I mean, sometimes I'm a bit aggravated on songs like You Me in the Class where I want them to go deeper and flesh it out even more, but still, I think that he's improved on that front. The hooks are just as catchy as Welcome to the Neighborhood, and some of these songs just lift off straight to the 90s or else early 2000s sounding stratosphere, and if y'all know me, I mean, that is right up my alley. To their slight disadvantage, I will say that Henry has this vocal thing that he does where it seems like he borrows a lot of their own melodies and the way that the songs progress with like the little peaks and valleys in their songs. It's almost like you could cut out one part of one of the new tracks here on Glue and then replace it with, say, Halo or a lyric from even their first record, and it just fits in because he goes for that same old tried and true method. And as they advance and continue to grow as a band, I hope that they work past that a little bit more because it can feel too familiar. This is a slamming record with some fantastic songs that really do elevate you. They remain memorable, catchy, and also intricate and emotional. I love the emotions that run high on this album because you can truly see that Henry's trying to really get these demons in his head under control. On a High Ledge might be simple lyrically, but it's not simple at all in terms of its message, as he talks about toxic masculinity, something that was brought up on the last album, and here specifically male suicide, because men are told to man up and be this certain version of themselves, and especially in the UK, apparently that's a lot more prevalent, and this felt almost like Nine Inch Nails meets Boston Manor's new modern sound, and it's glorious. Stuck in the Mud also tried to do similar things, but to me, this felt a little bit too influenced by bands like Linkin Park, to the point where I just pointed out the melody and some of the guitars that work their way in, and I'm like, that's Mike Shinoda. This is Linkin Park down to a T. See, those influences creep up on some of the other tracks like Plasticine Dreams, which is 90s nostalgia overload with a Boston Manor twist. But it works because it's not just Oasis sounding, they put their own spin to it, and it remains so effervescent, so easy to listen to. It brightens my day every time. Aggression, guitar solos, and fantastic performances from all the band members come out on some of the most memorable highlights here, like Ones and Zeros. That one in particular, vocally, is very engaging because of how angry it gets. Also, You, Me, and the Class War. That is one that I wanted to see him go deeper on, but what we do get is electrifying. The 3-song run towards the end of the album that starts with Playing God into Brand New Kids and also Ratking is untouchable. This is like lightning in a bottle. Playing God is so fierce, and at first, I was disappointed it wasn't a Paramore cover, but once I heard what they did with this track, it's like they dialed the knob up to 11 and just poured it straight into my soul. I feel the intensity, I feel the heat from this track. Brand New Kids has to be one of the catchiest songs that they have ever written, and I love the tenacity, the backbone, the spirit of that song. Probably my tops on the LP, and also right after that we get Ratking, which, as I noted before, is classic Boston Manor with a stern hook. Introspection delves in deeper on Terrible Love, where I like to see this inner monologue and conflict playing out in kind of a chaotic guitar-fueled world. They also make some choices throughout the LP that lean on electronics, or they breeze by something that might remind me of Nine Inch Nails or another group from the 90s or the 2000s. But the thing is, this is such a fierce listen, something that feels compelling to listen to. From the opening track that is a little bit questionable to that fantastic closer Monolith that is so angry, the spirited screams here, and that outro that sends chills down my spine. Don't turn that song off early because you will be missing the hell out. Boston Manor killed it on album 3, and they continue to prove why they're one of the most underrated bands on the block in the UK and worldwide, and why they're one of the most exciting things to happen to rock in recent years. They're evolving, they're expanding, and while it's maybe a bit overly long, there's some experimenting here that definitely went in their favor. I'm feeling a very strong 4 for this album, slightly under Welcome to the Neighborhood, but who knows, that could bump up with time as I give it even more listens. What did you guys think of Glue? Let me know in the comment section down below. I truly hope that you do check out this album. I know that some people have told me that I introduced them to Boston Manor in the first place, and that's what it's all about, baby. I'm passing it on to you guys. If you want to see my thoughts on Welcome to the Neighborhood, then tap this card here, or tap here for another recent rock review. Socials in the description, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.